Over the last couple of years, I have reviewed a lot of Gibson Les Paul custom guitars, including this Alpine White. I also did some of the Epiphone inspired by Gibson custom guitars like the 79 Adan Jones and the Greenie. Ever since early 2024 though, you guys have been asking me to review another guitar and compare it to my Les Paul Custom. And I got it right here. It is the 2024 inspired by Gibson Custom Les Paul Custom in Alpine White. This is the latest flagship Les Paul Custom by Epiphone. It has the open book headstock and I'm gonna compare it to the Gibson Les Paul Custom, tell you the similarities and the differences. I'm also gonna explain why you should upgrade to this latest version if you have the previous, or why you should stick with your signature models. The guitar that I'm gonna talk about today is a part of the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection. Remember that, Gibson Custom. The collection got an update for 2025 with a couple of new models that I wanna review, especially that Les Paul Standard and the Firebird. But before we talk about the Inspired by Gibson Custom, let's discuss the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson. Don't get these two confused. The first collection was the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson. This collection was introduced back in 2020. The Inspired by Gibson Custom was introduced in 2024. I have been lucky enough to review a lot of the guitars from the Inspired by Gibson collection, starting with this Cantrell Wino Les Paul Custom, which in my opinion is the best bang for buck. Here is the regular Les Paul Custom Ebony from my previous video comparison. There is the Cantrell Prophecy. I pretty much covered the most important guitars from this collection: the Prophecies, the Modern, the Muse. I have reviewed the original Designer series, both the Explorer and the Flying V. I did a video for the Flying V Prophecy and two of the Exturas. I haven't yet done a couple of guitars like Jimi Hendrix Flying V, but I will get one, the Dave Grohl. I'm not sure what the 79 is doing here. It's part of the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection, not the Inspired by Gibson. Also, the Kirk Hammett Flying V is from the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection. The Greenie is here as well. I've done Dave Mustaine's Flying V Custom, the Adan Jones Art Collection, Brendan Small's Ghost Horse I've also loved, a couple of Slash guitars. There's the Art Collection. I've done the Veil of Beast, I've done the Queen Bee, I've done Frazetta. These are amazing guitars. You should check out these videos. I've done most of the Slash covers, the Victoria, Appetite for Destruction, the Vermilion, the Anaconda. Check these videos out. Most important, the 2022 Inspired by Gibson collection gave us the Epiphone Les Paul Custom in both Alpine White and Ebony. I can see that as of right now the Alpine White is discontinued, but it will probably be back in stock again soon. Here's the Ebony, and both guitars retail for $799. My previous Gibson vs Epiphone video included the Epiphone Les Paul Custom Inspired by Gibson in the Ebony color. You should definitely check this video out before continuing with this one. What you need to remember is that these guitars had the Kalamazoo headstock, the plastic inlays, 3-piece mahogany necks, and these, as you can see here on the electronics, are the Epiphone Pro Bucker 2 and 3 pickups. This Les Paul Custom also featured an old mahogany body without the maple cap. Now in 2024, a couple of guitars marked the beginning of the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection. I had experience with these guitars because I've ordered them for the shop that I used to work in back then. It was the 79 Les Paul Custom Adan Jones that I've just reviewed, the Greenie. Both of them featured the open book headstock. Greenie had a one-piece mahogany neck. Then there was also the Corina series, the Explorer and the Flying V. The 79 had a three-piece maple neck, and the Flying V for Kirk also had a one-piece mahogany neck. Now it's important to know that these guitars came out before Epiphone announced the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection and before they came out with the regular Les Paul Custom with the open book headstock. They also came out with the Les Paul Standard with one-piece mahogany neck and custom Booker pickups. And on to the matter at hand, the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection gave us the upgraded Les Paul Custom in Alpine white with the open book headstock, Gibson pickups, one-piece mahogany neck for $1,300, both in Alpine white and ebony, as you can see.
Next up, the tuxedo itself, the Les Paul Custom Alpine white. Solid mahogany body with that maple cap, one-piece neck again for that stability and just that solid construction. Long neck tenon, of course, ebony fingerboard with those mother of pearl inlays there and the logo at the top, really nice touch. You've got the hardwired harness, so the electronics are always going to be premium on these models. The CTS pots, the Mallory caps, and just like its custom shop model, you've got that matched set of Gibson humbuckers. So you're getting the 490 and the 498T here. Gold hardware with the Grover tuners. Just a fantastic example here, and love to see it with this level of accuracy now with this new custom shop inspired collection.
I will do this comparison in a similar fashion to my previous video for better reference. In the aforementioned previous video, I had an Excel table with the differences in specs between both guitars. For this video, I'm going to include that same information but also add both of my Alpine white guitars. And this is the time to mention that both of these guitars are mine. I have paid with my own money and I'm not in any way sponsored by Epiphone or anyone else. I managed to get a good deal on the Epi, but more on that later. With that in mind, you can be damn sure that I'm going to call it as I see, feel and hear it, and you are going to hear nothing but my own personal opinion. I will also try to be objective considering the huge price difference between both guitars and not give the Epi too much of a hard time. As I already mentioned, I reviewed a lot of the Inspired by Gibson 2020 lineup models. Among them is, of course, the Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom Ebony, which I compared to my 2019 Gibson Les Paul Custom Ebony. That video got a lot of views, which is understandable because both of these guitars are iconic and desirable. And with that video, I thought I was done with the Epiphone Les Paul Custom after reviewing a lot of its variations and artist models. Then something interesting happened, the Adan Jones Artist Collection. And with these guitars came the three-piece maple necks and the Seymour Duncan pickups, upgraded electronics. Around that same time, which was late 2023, also came the Kirk Hammett Greenie, which was the first model with one-piece mahogany neck and the open book headstock. It was a sign of things to come. Shortly after came the 1979 Adan Jones Custom, which I have just reviewed. In that video I also mentioned why you should go for the 79 or you should pick up the Inspired by Gibson Custom Les Paul Custom that I'm reviewing right now, so be sure to check out the 79 video as well. Now I've been following both lineups ever since they've been conceived, especially the 2022 Inspired by Gibson collection. I worked in a guitar store and I was lucky enough to be able to order most of these guitars and play and review them. So this is how it all went down. Initially, it was kind of okay. The Kalamazoo headstock was introduced, CTS pots. The prices were not that high. They were around the $800, $900, maximum $1,000 ballpark. Then a major shift happened with the introduction of a couple of artist models, especially the Adan Jones Les Paul Custom Artist Collection and a couple of Dave Mustaine signature models. With them came the hefty price tags like 1,300, 1,400, 5, even 600 for a couple of models in Europe. It was a sign of things to come. Epiphone were not gonna get cheaper, but you know, for the higher price tag they had to give something more. And to be honest, somewhere at the end of the artist collection by Adan Jones, when I've reviewed a lot of his guitars, I was thinking, as soon as Epiphone introduces a silver burst Les Paul Custom without the art in the back and a bit cheaper, it's over. I wasn't expecting pearl inlays, I wasn't expecting the open book headstock, I wasn't expecting the Gibson pickups. They even threw in a hard shell case, and to be honest, the price tag of $1,299 is relatively, I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's affordable and you get a lot for that money, and definitely gives the Epiphone a fighting chance against the Gibson, because the idea of this video is to compare the Epiphone, the latest variation, the Gibson Custom Inspired one, to the actual Gibson Les Paul Custom that I've owned. But I'm gonna do more than that. I'm not just gonna ignore the 2020 Inspired by Gibson version. I'm gonna discuss why you should upgrade to the Inspired by Gibson Custom, or why you should stick with your previous one or other models that you might have. Here's the thing though, there's still a huge price gap between the Epiphone and Gibson. Now the regular Inspired by Gibson is around $800, you can find a good deal for it. The Inspired by Gibson Custom is $1,300. The Les Paul Custom by Gibson is at around $5,000-$6,000 depending on which deal do you have. And here's the thing, I said it in my previous video, I'm gonna say it in this one as well. The Epiphone, even though it looks like it, even though the specs mention the same name for the materials, is not the Gibson, and I think it's never gonna be. So don't get me wrong, this latest variation of the Epiphone Les Paul Custom is the best so far, but it's not the Gibson. A lot of people mention in the comments, oh, it's just a Gibson with the Epiphone logo. It's not. I've showed you a lot of differences in my previous video. They're still here. There are some major improvements that I admit are huge upgrades over the previous version, but there are still a lot of differences, and the Epiphone feels like a Chinese made guitar compared to the Gibson made in the custom shop. Here's the 2022 Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom in Alpine White that I've reviewed. And here's the thing, back in 2020 when the Inspired by Gibson lineup was introduced, I thought that it's a great addition to the Epiphone family, and I didn't think there's more ground for improvement for these models. Back then the issues that I had with this model were the bridge, the lock tone bridge. I didn't mind the pickups, they already had the CTS pots. I didn't like the 3-piece mahogany neck, the scarf joint for the headstock and the heel. But for $729 or $799, I thought that this is a great deal, and still is. In this video I'm gonna include some cut content from my Alpine White 2022 Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom review. I'm gonna include what's under the pickups, the neck joint, and I'm gonna show you the electronics in the back. I'm gonna do this to demonstrate just how far the new Inspired by Gibson Custom has improved over this Inspired by Gibson model. Here's the thing though, I think the Epiphone Les Paul Custom has reached its limit. I don't think there's much more ground for improvement. The only issue that I have with it right now is still the lock tone bridge that can be swapped for something else, and the poly finish that I don't think Epiphone are gonna do nitro anytime soon. But even with those, it's good enough, but it's not the Gibson, and I think it's never gonna be. Maybe if Epiphone starts making it in Japan, but still it's gonna be like any Greco, Bernie. I just think that the Epiphone is never gonna be the Gibson. The sound is there, the looks are there, the feel is just not there. Regardless of that though, the new Inspired by Gibson Custom is amazing, and here's what's improved. On to the improvements that get the Epiphone closer to the Gibson. First of all, the body is solid mahogany and features a plain maple top. The previous version had only mahogany body like the 57 Gibson. Now this version is closer to the modern Les Paul Custom. The Inspired by Gibson Custom features the Gibson USA 490R 498T pickups, same as the Gibson Les Paul Custom. and switchcraft 3-way switch and output jack. The previous model had the ProBuckers and the CTS pots in the back, but this one features the CTS pots and Mallory capacitors. The biggest upgrade over the 2020 lineup though is that the Inspired by Gibson Custom features a one-piece mahogany neck. It also has a long neck tenon, so this gets it closer to the spec of the Gibson that also has a one-piece mahogany neck. Ebony fingerboard for both guitars, as you can see, and mother of pearl inlays. Graphtec nut instead of the new bone for the previous version, and open book headstock, as you can see. That's a huge selling point for a lot of people because it looks like the Gibson. The major differences remain as in the previous video. This is made in the Nashville custom shop, this is made in the Qingdao Chinese factory. The next difference is hard to demonstrate. Premium materials for the Gibson selected by the custom shop as evident by the ebony fingerboard, as you can see on the Chinese guitar, brownish in color and more pores visible. These guitars are just built in a different way, and as you can see the Gibson still features a nitro finish, this has the poly. Nitro ages different. I'm gonna be honest, this latest version of the Epiphone Les Paul Custom from the Inspired by Gibson Custom collection makes it harder for me to explain differences and justify buying the Gibson. Make no mistake though, the differences are a lot and I definitely prefer the Gibson, but the price of $6,000 is not justifiable if you're a player and you just need a guitar to play on stage or not worry about it to get stolen or something like that. Here's where it's hard for me to explain it, because if you look at the spec sheet, I'm gonna show you the comparison table in a second, there are a lot of similarities. On paper these two guitars are absolutely the same, minus a couple of minimal differences like the nitro finish for example, and that one is built in USA, one in China. But hear me out, these two guitars feel totally different when you play them. Playability, comfort are still way towards the Gibson side. Both guitars get the job done though, but you will definitely feel the difference between the Chinese made and the custom shop Gibson made in USA guitars in your hands if you're an experienced player. If you're a beginner, well, maybe you should go for the Epiphone.
So here we have the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom in Alpine White. Got an all mahogany body here. The neck is that 60s slim taper neck. Nice and easy to play there. Ebony fretboard. You do get ebony fretboards on this model as well as the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson Custom behind me here. Pickups are going to be those Epiphone Pro Buckers. Now those are closely engineered to replicate those burst buckers that you get in Gibson guitars. The bridge and tailpiece are going to be the Epiphone lock tone style. You do get CTS pots on this model and the Inspired by Gibson Custom model behind me, and with this one the case is optional. And then on the back, as you can see, you've got a set of Grover tuners there just to keep the tuning stable. And here we have the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson Custom Les Paul Custom in Alpine White. We have that solid mahogany body with a maple cap, a one-piece 50s rounded C-profile neck with genuine mother of pearl inlays here on that ebony fretboard. And then you've also got a nice touch here, which is that Gibson open book headstock, just to make it look even closer to the real custom shop model there. Gold hardware throughout. You've got the Grover Rotomatic tuners on the back to keep that tuning under control. Pickups are a little bit different this time. We've got the Gibson 490R and the Gibson 498T pickups, just like the custom shop model would have. CTS pots, Mallory caps, all in a hand-wired configuration here. And this model does come with a case. Let's take a listen to them.
Allow me to get even more specific with this table. Now in it I have the 2008 Gibson Les Paul Custom Alpine White, the 2019 Gibson Les Paul Custom Ebony, the 2022 Epiphone Les Paul Custom Ebony inspired by Gibson, and the 2024 Epiphone Les Paul Custom inspired by Gibson Custom in Alpine White. The differences between my 2008 Gibson Les Paul Custom Alpine White and the 2019 are only the color, and the 2008 has a set neck construction with a short neck tenon instead of the long neck for the 2019, and my Alpine White is heavy as fuck. The neck is also a bit thicker. Now the differences between the 2022 inspired by Gibson and the 2024 inspired by Gibson Custom are a lot. To make it easier for you to understand, I've marked the upgrades for the 2024 model over the 2022 in green, and the only thing marked in red is the difference in the neck. For example, the 2022 model has a mahogany body, the 2024 mahogany and plain maple top. One-piece mahogany neck for the 2024, three-piece for the 2022. One difference that should affect playability for a lot of you is the difference in the neck for the 2022. Now the 2024 newer model has a considerably thicker neck, especially around the 12th fret. So keep these numbers in mind and be sure they feel different. If you like thinner necks, go for the inspired by Gibson previous model. Other differences worth mentioning: the open book headstock, mother of pearl inlays, Gibson USA pickups, and the hard shell case. On paper, the new 2024 inspired by Gibson Custom Les Paul is as close as possible to the Gibson. Now let's see if that's the case. I'm gonna start by restringing my Gibson and put some much needed fingerboard oil. A couple of things to know with the specs: we have a solid mahogany body, two-piece maple top, and nitrocellulose finish. This was Alpine White, like a really white, but it gets yellow over time, and if you lift the pickups you can see some of that original color, that even that get yellower. I have explained in my original review for this guitar how nitro ages. The Epi is not gonna get as yellow as this guitar. Keep this in mind if some yellowing is gonna put you off in time. Just to confirm, my 2008 Les Paul Custom doesn't have a long neck tenon, my Silver Burst does, my 2019 has, so consider this a handicap. Anyway, as you can see, that's the color of the mahogany body and you can see the maple top. That's the Gibson USA set of pickups, the 490R 498T, these are PAFs. The Gibson USA logo underneath, but they don't have the PAF sticker. Here's what the Gibson pickguard looks like before I put it back on the body. I think it's 5-ply, has gold hardware, the bracket to adjust it, and 2 screws to hold it in place. 13.75k ohms for the 498T, switching over to the 490R, 780. These are the same readings, almost the same as the inspired by Gibson Custom, different to the inspired by Gibson though, as you shall see. I've replaced the original black speed knobs with reflector top hats. I just love how they look on Gibson Les Paul Customs. I have them on all my customs, I have them on the Silver Burst as well. Originally they should look like this, but indulge me on this one. You'll know the difference when you see the guitars. This one is much yellower. The bridge and the tailpiece are different on the Gibson. You see PW mark on the bottom side. The Epiphone uses the lock tone, which I don't like. This is a place that the Epiphone could still be improved. These are much better on the Gibson. 53 grams for the bridge, and the tailpiece is solid. This should be around 70 grams as usual, and you can see how it aged. The gold plating on it fell off. 85, this is substantial. It has imperial spacing, it's adjusted only by a thumb wheel, and it has inserts into the body. This being a 2008 model has the ebony fingerboard. Later on in early 2012 Gibson switched to rich light for this model, the Silver Burst that I have, due to the FBI rates, and later in early 2019 they switched back to ebony again. So ebony for both guitars, but the Gibson has a much higher grade. As you can see, the binding on my Gibson aged as well, it got yellow. Fret edge binding, the Epiphone doesn't have it, and beautiful consistent mother of pearl inlays. The Epiphone got pearl as well. Now let's measure the neck. 43mm or 1.69 inch for the nut. The 5th fret is at 48mm or 1.88 inch. The 12th fret is at 52.6mm or 2.07 inches. Thickness at the first fret 21.2 or 0.83 inch. Thickness at the 5th fret 22.8mm or 0.89 inch. Thickness at the 12th fret 24.8mm or almost an inch. Later in the video I'm also measuring the Inspired by Gibson and the Inspired by Gibson Custom necks. The full thickness body for a Gibson Les Paul Custom usually measures a little over 2 inches. And just for comparison of thickness, here's my 2013 Silver Burst as well. And by the way, this is what a rich light fingerboard looks like. The body thickness of this one is the same, 52mm or over 2 inches. Now the spacing for the Gibson Les Paul Customs is different. It's Imperial, it's 60mm between the pickups. Here's for the Silver Burst as well. The Epiphone is different, as I shall demonstrate. Here's the neck profile of my Gibson Les Paul Custom. It's medium C, it's nicely and rounded off on the first fret, and it's a little bit flatter near the 12th fret. Keep in mind that this is considerably heavy age for a 2008 model. It has been love and played, it's in perfectly working condition, but the nitro has aged, especially here where it got in contact with the playing hands. Here's what the electronics looks like, the CTS pots, but keep in mind that this guitar has been rewired. It had EMG pots at some point, so that's not the original hand wiring. But it is using original components, so it should sound about right. Of course, this being a Gibson has a single piece mahogany neck and wings on the side for the headstock, serial number and Gibson custom logo here. This is the first time I am buying regular slinkies in a pack of 3. Usually I buy a box of 12, but anyway, they are the same strings. For proper comparison, I'm equipping both guitars with 1046 regular slinkies. I'm gonna set the same pickup height, same string height. I'm gonna try and do a similar setup on both guitars. So this is what the regular slinkies look like out of the box, just to show you guys. As I'm doing the setup, I remembered to show you guys the truss rod cover and the truss rod, which is different to the Epiphone. This is the traditional with the nut. The Epiphone has a two-way adjustable by a 4mm Allen wrench, as I shall demonstrate later. You could go lower on these guitars with proper setup by a guitar tech, but for me it's okay. Now on to the first Epiphone guitar I'm gonna show you. As promised, for the sake of completion, I'm gonna include a part of my 2022 Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom Alpine White review. This time I'm gonna include some essential cut content from my previous video, like I'm gonna show you the pickups, what's in the cavities of the pickups, and the electronics cavity. Starting with the specs of the 2022 Inspired by Gibson, I'm also gonna talk over my old video, giving you some new insight about the guitar now that I've tried the newer 2024 Inspired by Gibson Custom model. Anyway, mahogany neck, set neck construction, ebony fingerboard, 22 medium jumbo frets, 12-inch radius, 24.75-inch scale length, Kalamazoo headstock with the diamond, Epiphone logo, Wilkinson tuners again on this one. It was a surprise for me. Then we have the new bone nut by Graphtec, Probucker 2, Probucker 3 pickups, Epiphone lock tone bridge and a tailpiece. Here's a solid proof that the top is not made out of maple. You see this little unpainted area. If the top was maple, there would have been a difference in the colors of the wood. There's still a seam line, so this interior is a mahogany sandwich body. A multiple piece mahogany back with a mahogany top. And here's the routing for the 3-way switch and the pickup cables. So yeah, when I reviewed the ebony, I couldn't tell if it had maple top or not, but it doesn't. It honors the 50s classic and it should be all mahogany. So I was wrong in my previous video, but we're not gonna tell anyone. It's gonna be our little secret, okay? Shh. The neck pickup. Probucker 2 gold humbucker neck 4 and 2 conductor, meaning that you can wire it in a way that it splits. We got the date, compliance regulation sticker, designed by Epiphone, gold cover. Pretty much the same for the bridge. Probucker 3 gold humbucker bridge 4 and 2 conductor. You can easily unsolder the gold cover yourself for that open coil pickup look. Black pickup rings following the curve of the top, slanted, and we have short screws for the neck, long screws for the bridge. Here's what the pickguard looks like, closely resembles the one on the Gibson Les Paul Custom. It has a golden hardware, the bracket and 2 screws. One of them has a bigger head, so it catches here on the bracket. The controls are bridge volume, bridge tone, neck tone. The pots are long shaft, raised above the mahogany top, and we got black speed knobs. Measuring the pickups, the Probucker 3 in the bridge position is at 855 k ohms, switching over to the neck Probucker 2, 790, middle position 410. I almost forgot to show you the hardware, but you've seen these God knows how many times. I'm not gonna explain what the Epiphone lock tone bridge is, but I would definitely replace it with a Schaller or a Grover one, metric, thumb wheel, flathead screwdriver adjustable. It is the one thing that you can improve. I would keep the stop bar though. Double bound body, multiply binding for the top and the back. It has a curved top, pick guard. I like the overall aesthetic of the Alpine white, the hardware and the plastics, and what's important, this has polyurethane finish, meaning it will not age as the Gibson. It's not gonna turn yellow unless you're a smoker or you play in clubs that allow smokers. The Epiphone will easily stay white and fresh if you take care of it and keep it in a case. Before I show you the neck, I've noticed some inconsistencies in the paint and the binding over here. It's not a huge deal, but it's there. Anyway, we have a multiple piece mahogany neck with a set neck construction glued in. The neck is bound, single ply binding with black side dots. The neck binding is okay, I don't see any rough instrument marks overall. The fingerboard is made out of ebony, and I gotta say they chose a good piece of ebony for this one. It is consistent. Usually I see lighter in color pores over here at the last frets. This one is dark everywhere. Definitely one of the best ebony boards that I've seen on Epiphone. Then I check for consistency the plastic inlays, the pearloid inlays. All of them seem fine. The pattern is good, none of them are plain. The frets are not scratchy or overhang, they're good. Even the nut is okay. The new Bone by Graphtec nut is flush with the binding and the headstock. I wouldn't be in a hurry to replace it. The Inspired by Gibson collection in 2020 marks the return of the Kalamazoo headstock with multiply binding, looks beautiful, black veneer on top of that, and the custom diamond, which is amazing. Looks great. I think this is actual mother of pearl, the Epiphone logo as well. Surprise, surprise, both my Epiphone 2022 Les Paul Customs came with Wilkinson tuners instead of the official spec Grover ones. They are just as good as the Grovers and weigh the same, so I don't mind. This is what the truss rod cavity looks like. Two-way adjustable with a 4mm Allen nut, and the cover for it, the traditional Epiphone bell, 3 screws, Les Paul Custom written on it, 2-ply. Here's where I give you some new insight. The neck of the 2022 Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom is considerably thinner and flatter than the new 2024 Inspired by Gibson Custom model, and you should take this into account when choosing. Full body thickness at 48.7mm. Here's what the 60s slim taper neck profile looks like. It is rounded off, but not as round as on the Gibson Les Paul Custom. Distance between the pickup rings 58.5. These two measurements differ on the Epiphone and the Gibson, as I demonstrated in my previous video. Back of the guitar, more of the same, the Alpine white finish, polyurethane and multiply binding. Here's the cavity for the 3-way switch. It is painted so we don't see the mahogany top. The electronics compartment painted as well. Here we have the CTS 500K pots, part of the Inspired by Gibson collection, the quick connect system for the pickups, ground wire. Here's some more new insight. This is the 2022 Inspired by Gibson collection and it has the CTS pots, but as you can see it has the quick connect plugs for the Probuckers. The new model 2024 is hand wired and has Switchcraft output jack and 3-way switch. This has the Epiphone switch and jack. Original strap button with some felt here and one over here. The plastic covers for the electronic compartment and the 3-way switch, gloss on the back side, front is satin. Business as usual, the holes are a bit misaligned, so you have to play around with it to find the original position in which it was drilled. I think the Qingdao Chinese factory can definitely improve in this area, make some sort of template. Another important difference with the new model, 3-piece mahogany neck, heel joint, 1 piece all the way to here, scarf joint to the headstock. That was majorly improved in the Inspired by Gibson Custom. Handcrafted in China sticker, and these are the Wilkinson tuners, they are absolutely identical with the Grovers. If you want to know more about these, you can check out my Epiphone Les Paul Custom Ebony review. On to the barely visible serial number 2206, made in June of 2022, 15 is the code for Qingdao, China. On to the newest, latest and ultimate version of the Les Paul Custom, the 2024 Inspired by Gibson Custom model. As I browse to the picture, I'm gonna also show you the original listing for this guitar because I don't want it to go away in time. You know, everything happens with websites. Usually I'm using a Wayback Machine to check these out, but it's better to have them in the video. So here's the original listing for the Inspired by Gibson Custom Les Paul Custom, and it comes in two colors, the ebony, the Alpine white, and retails for 1,300. And I like how they have described it. As a part of the ongoing collaboration with the Gibson Custom shop, Epiphone is proud to introduce the flagship Les Paul Custom to the Inspired by Gibson Custom lineup. So they're proudly calling this a flagship. Anyway, let's check out the specs. We have a Les Paul type of body, maple cap, unlike the Inspired by Gibson previous model, which was all mahogany. They've listed the body as solid mahogany, no mentioning of a weight relief. Modern medium C neck profile. It's different to the Inspired by Gibson collection. It's similar to the Gibson, mother of pearl inlays like the Gibson, ebony fingerboard, 22 frets, and upgraded graph tech instead of the new bone nut. For the hardware, we have unfortunately the same lock tone bridge and a tailpiece. We have a Grover tuners 18:1 ratio which work just fine, and the switch is, yep, we have the Gibson USA 490R 490AT set of pickups, Switchcraft 3-way toggle, and a Switchcraft output jack, as I was saying. So not only the 3-way switch and the output jack are upgraded, but we also have the CTS pots like the previous model, but this time with Mallory capacitors and hand wired. I'm honestly surprised how much of an upgrade this Inspired by Gibson Custom model is. I also love the inclusion of the black hard shell case, and the color of the interior is goldenrod. Before I start with the review, I'm gonna point out that this is a brand new Epiphone 2024 Inspired by Gibson Custom. I've just removed the protective film on the pickups, and I'm gonna remove it on the pickguard as well. As usual with new guitars, I start with oiling the fingerboard, and I can already see that this is a totally different grade of ebony compared to the Gibson Les Paul Custom. Much brownish, wider pores. I mean, check it out on the Gibson. This is highly dense black ebony. Of course, using this sort of high-grade ebony got Gibson in trouble in 2012, but yeah, you can see the difference. Peeling off the protective film on the pickguard is hard to do one-handed, but it's so satisfying, and I'm used to doing it one-handed. You know what I mean? Speaking of stupid puns, the wood screws on the pickup frame for the neck pickup and the pickguard were too tightly screwed. Just to pump up the running time of my video, let me run you through the specs again. We have a solid mahogany body, plain maple top, one-piece mahogany neck, open book headstock, Grover 18:1 ratio automatic tuners, ebony fingerboard, 22 medium jumbo frets, mother of pearl inlays. A set of Gibson USA 490R 498T pickups, Epiphone, lock tone bridge and the tailpiece, and the Gibson Electronic CTS pots, Mallory capacitors, Switchcraft 3-way switch, and a Switchcraft output jack. So on paper that's a Gibson. Of course, Chinese manufacturing snapped me back to reality pretty quick. Some masking tape under the paint forgotten near the long neck tenon. Of course, this is purely cosmetic, but it shows me the level of attention these guitars get during manufacturing. These guitars are still done in a hurry and in greater numbers. Anyway, let's check out what's under the bridge pickup. And we're in luck, we can see more of the mahogany wood grain, and this is the QR sticker with the model, serial number, etc, etc. Model designation LPCUS AW Les Paul Custom Alpine White. The edges of the maple top are painted white, so you cannot see the actual color of the top, but you can see the separation line between the darker mahogany wood and the lighter maple top. I don't know how many pieces, probably 3. Let's have a look at that glorious set of Gibson USA pickups. For the neck we have a 490R, made in the 15th of January, February, March, April of 2024. Gold cap for it, and for the bridge position we have the 498T, which is made in 22nd of April in the same year. The pickup rings are different than the Gibson though, which is expected for an Epiphone. Short screws for the front, long screws for the back. Thankfully this time we have an upgraded Switchcraft 3-way switch like the Gibsons, and these are the original black speed knobs that usually Gibsons come with. Of course, as expected for a mass-produced Chinese guitars, the pots don't properly follow the curvature of the top. They are much better aligned on the Gibson guitars. Let's measure the Gibson set. The 498T is a bit hotter than my Alpine White Gibson at 1412. The 490 is similar to my Gibson at 787. And the middle position 504. Even though this pickup reads hotter, I feel that my Gibson has more gain. But as we know, two guitars and two sets of pickups are almost never the same. And this, the lock tone bridge, is my only complaint left for the Epiphone Les Paul Custom. I don't like these bridges, even though they're convenient for restringing guitars. I think Epiphone should have went with the ABR1 bridge that they are using on the Inspired by Gibson Custom Les Paul standards. I know it's not exactly correct, but it looks much better without the adjustment for a flathead screwdriver. The tailpiece is considerably lightweight compared to the Gibson as well, so definitely ground for improvement here. We got multiply binding for the top and the bottom, and as you can see, this is a brand new guitar. It looks like a snow white finish. Epiphones get yellow with time as well. The binding gets yellow too, but not as much as the nitrocellulose finished Gibsons. Poly finishes get yellow as well. My Veil of Bees Adan Jones Epiphone Les Paul Custom has started to get yellow, especially the binding, but not as severe as the Gibsons. If you want your guitar to be nice and white for longer, you're better off with the Epiphone, or else get the nitro finished Gibson. You can refinish the Epiphone with nitro as well, but it's gonna be costly, I guess. The star of the show for this Epiphone inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom, of course, other than the maple top and the Gibson USA pickups, the one-piece mahogany neck that goes all the way up to the headstock, and unlike the Gibson, doesn't have wings for the headstock, which is pretty cool. No scarf joint, no neck heel, ebony fingerboard, even though it's lower grade than the Gibson. And what's even cooler is that these models now feature mother of pearl inlays. No fret nips, unfortunately, which seems to be a deal breaker for some folks. I don't care personally about that. Medium jumbo frets as well, and the fretwork on this particular guitar seems to be done fine, but it differs from guitar to guitar. I've gotten a lot of Epiphone Les Pauls and the custom models that have bad fretwork. I also like to check for consistencies of the pattern of the mother of pearl inlays. These seem to be chosen well, other than one or two of them. Overall, it's pretty good. This is an upgraded nut. The previous model had the new bone. This one is Graph Tech, which is twice more expensive. I have a sort of an issue with the headstock, even though it has a multiply binding. I'm not a fan of the Epiphone binding, and the fact that this is mother of pearl logo and diamond, and on top of that it has poly finish, it looks duller compared to the Gibson. You see how the diamond and the logo pops on the nitro finish here? The Gibson looks and feels much more natural and expensive. Anyway, another difference between the Gibson and the Epiphone on the headstock is the truss rod cover, which has 3 screws for the Epiphone, and the Gibson has the bell with 2 screws like that. I don't care about the truss rod cover. What I do care is that the Epiphone has the newer model 2-way adjustable truss rod, which is adjusted by a 4mm Allen wrench. I know that this is supposed to be a better way to adjust the truss rod, but I kinda prefer the traditional truss rod on a Les Paul here. What I do like is that the neck is much more similar to the Gibson Les Paul Custom this time, 1.69 for the nut. The 5th fret is at 1.88, 48mm. The 12th fret is at 53mm, 2.08. Bang on dimensions for a Les Paul Custom neck, admirations for Epiphone this time. Thickness at the 1st fret 21.2mm or 0.83 inch, very similar to my Gibson Les Paul Custom. Thickness at the 5th fret 22.4mm or 0.88, again very similar to the Gibson. A bit thicker, interestingly, on the 12th fret at almost an inch. Honestly, I'm surprised how close Epiphone got the neck profile to the Gibson this time, so you're gonna feel right at home if you own Gibsons. Of course, 12-inch radius as on any Gibson Les Paul Custom, 24.75-inch scale length. Almost perfect with the body thickness, a bit thinner, probably due to the finish. The Gibson has the nitro, this one is poly. What's different though is the spacing between the pickups and the spacing between the bridge pickup and the bridge. This is the metric spacing and it feels different, especially when you're doing the pinch harmonics. The Gibson feels different. Here's what the neck profile looks like. It's similar to the Gibson Les Paul Custom, but it's slightly flatter on the first fret and thicker near the 12th. But you gotta keep one thing in mind, even with the Gibson's neck profiles vary from year to year. People are constantly searching for the perfect one. Epiphone seem to get a lot of things right with this model. Here's what the back of the Inspired by Gibson Custom AP looks like. Binding for it, of course, the Alpine white cover, and the cover for the electronics features the Epiphone Inspired by Gibson Custom logo. I hope it's not done in the same way as my Veil of Bees, because this gets scratched off in time. Here's what the electronics compartment looks like without the cover. As I mentioned before, this time it's hand-wired to mimic closely the Gibson, and it has Mallory capacitors as an addition to the CTS pots. You can see their specs when I zoom in like that. What I don't like is that I'm again seeing a sort of a messy and done in a hurry job with the routing and everything. What's that? Yep, that's exactly what I think. That's some masking tape that has been painted over. I know I'm being nitpicky, I know that's not a big deal, you don't see your electronics compartment every day, but for me things like that are a clear sign of how much attention to detail these guitars get, how much they're done in a hurry, so it's still a mass-produced Chinese guitar. Something else that I don't like as well is that the switchcraft switch is barely fitting in this cavity and the cover is pressing on it. What I would do is put some shielding on the back of these covers, because even with these high quality components, strap buttons here, this is the switchcraft output jack, as I told you, switchcraft 3-way switch, it still hums. The Epi has some feedback, but so does the Gibson. And speaking of the output jack, again the Epi has a different position for it, unlike the Gibson. Something that I've mentioned in my Epiphone Greenie review that I'm gonna stress out again is the importance of a one-piece mahogany neck. It's hard to demonstrate on video, but I cannot stress but enough how much better a one-piece mahogany neck feels compared to a three-piece with a scarf joint and the neck heel. Honestly, I feel this is peak Epiphone, at least for made in China guitar. I don't think these guitars can be improved any further. Maybe some nitro finish, but again they're still gonna feel like a Chinese guitar, which is not a bad thing. It's a great guitar, it's made in Qingdao, China, feels amazing, but again guys, that's not the Gibson and I think it's never gonna be. The serial number is barely visible, but it reads 240415, April of 2024. 15 is the Qingdao Chinese factory number. I kinda hate the packaging of this Tune It paste by Music Nomad. It's like premature ejaculation every time. I try to put on some paste when there's not much left in the tube. You see, it sprays all the way here on the headstock. When wrapping the strings around the pegs of the Grover tuners, I've noticed that the pegs on the Epi are much lower compared to these on the Gibson. And at first I thought, well, maybe the headstock of the Epi is thicker or something like that. But measuring them, 15.3 for the Epiphone, 15.1, so pretty much close. The difference is in the tuners, and I prefer the ones on the Gibson. They stick out enough, but just keep that in mind when you're doing more winds, especially on the thicker strings. I did the similar setup for both guitars. The string height is similar between the Epiphone and the Gibson. The pickup height is similar as well. And usually it's hard for me to do low string setup on the Epiphone because the fretwork is bad on most of these guitars, need attention from a guitar tech, but this one is okay. Another much needed upgrade to the previous model is the inclusion of a hard shell case, and this one is pretty classy. I like the look of it, especially with the Alpine white guitar. Just your typical Les Paul case. It has one latch over here, a leather handle, the locking latch, The key for it is included inside, one more latch here on the back, some leg support if you want to put the case standing up. These are the hinges on the back side, another latch and another hinge here. I did notice a factory scuff here near the headstock, and we got the Epiphone inspired by Gibson Custom on the case as well. The case candy seems to be the same as the inspired by Gibson lineup ever since 2020 and includes the download Gibson app, the international warranty and some stickers which are pretty much the same throughout the entire lineup since 2020. Maybe something new here would have been appreciated. Here's what the underside of the case looks like, and speaking of the case, here it is compared to the Gibson Les Paul Custom. The Epiphone case is slightly bulkier and longer for the headstock. The portion for the body seems to be the same, but the headstock compartment is bigger. Here's the original box that the guitar came with, pretty much the same box that Epiphone had been using ever since 2020, inspired by Gibson Custom, Les Paul Custom, some model numbers here, nothing that interesting. I'm gonna show it to you for the sake of preservation of the information for this guitar. Another fun fact, the Gibson with the aged nitro looks amazing in the Epiphone case. It's almost a perfect match. The weight is another issue that I have with the Epiphones. Now this is by far the heaviest Les Paul Custom I've ever owned, at almost 11 pounds. Usually Les Paul Customs should be a little bit lighter, as I will demonstrate with my Silver Burst, which seems to be almost the perfect weight at 4,372 grams or 9.5 pounds, something like that. The Epiphones are much lighter. You see that this is the inspired by Gibson one at 8.71 pounds. And the inspired by Gibson Custom at 8.54. Now a Les Paul Custom shouldn't feel this light. For me it feels cheaper when it's that light, but it is what it is. A lot of people would appreciate this because of their back problems. For me it should have been a pound heavier. With that in mind, on to the tone demo. had to tune both guitars regularly, like every 15 minutes or so, but that's normal for a Les Paul, even though the strings had been properly stretched 2 weeks ago. While I do this, I'm gonna explain what you're not hearing and seeing. Yes, both of these guitars might sound similar recorded, but in the room, Gibson definitely had the edge. Had a snappier attack, had more gain, was more pleasant to the ears. The playability and the feel is also much better with the Gibson. I know the Epiphone could be further improved, but I don't think it's gonna reach that custom shop level. Before I move on to the conclusion, in my opinion, it's worth upgrading to the Inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom unless you have one of these artist models, either the Artist Collection with the art in the back with the Kalamazoo headstock or the 79 Adan Jones. The idea is that these models already have the maple top, already have the better construction necks. In this case they are 3 pieces maple like that, but they are upgraded. They have the upgraded pickups as well. The only difference is that the Artist Collection doesn't have the mother of pearl inlays and the open book headstock, but if you don't care about these things, stick to your Artist Collection. Speaking of, here's the difference between the open book headstock and the Kalamazoo headstock on the right. Remember, Epiphone were the ones that introduced the open book headstock. If you absolutely must have it to look like the Gibson, hey, that's up to you. My conclusion is mostly the same as the previous video that I did, but I threw in another point of view this time. Should you upgrade to the Inspired by Gibson Custom if you already have the Inspired by Gibson model? And that is a tricky question. For me, the differences are no-brainer. Maple top, long neck tenon, one-piece mahogany neck. I don't even care about the pearl inlays and the open book headstock, but they are certainly a welcome addition. Here is the thing. If you bought the regular Inspired by Gibson and did nothing to improve it, no fretwork, no setup, no swapping of pickups, you did not buy the hard shell case, maybe you're better off upgrading to the Inspired by Gibson Custom because you will not lose much money. Hey, maybe you've even managed to get a good deal on it, you got it for around $600 even less dollars. You will lose even less money. However, if you've already upgraded the pickups, did the fretwork, did the setup, bought a case or a back, ended up with a guitar that feels perfect to you, maybe you're better off keeping it because it will be a hard sell with all the upgrades and you will end up losing money because people would just prefer to buy the Inspired by Gibson Custom instead. Currently the regular custom stands at around $799, while the Inspired by Gibson Custom is at around $1,299. If you already invested around $300 or $400 in the regular Les Paul Custom and you got a good guitar, it is probably not worth upgrading. If you did not, choosing the Inspired by Gibson Custom is a good deal. You can find both guitars for even cheaper. For example, I got it around $1,200, which is a good deal for the Inspired by Gibson Custom. However, if you get an artist model like the Cantrell Wino or the Adan Jones Artist series that already have upgraded pickups and hardshell cases, I would suggest sticking with them. Even though the Cantrell Wino Les Paul Custom has a 3-piece mahogany neck with the scarf joint and the heel, I think it's still the best value for money around for that model. The other point of view is in favor of the Gibson, and I already mentioned it in the other video. Should you buy the Gibson over the Epiphone if you have the funds and you don't mind the huge price difference? Yeah, it's worth it. As good as the new Epiphone is, it's still no Gibson. Still a lot of differences which are mainly felt by the player and hard to demonstrate in a video. Keep in mind that if you play on stage mic'd up, the audience will not be able to tell the difference between the Epiphone and the Gibson. Which is a good segue to my third point. As a player's guitar, if you play small gigs, small venues with an iffy or no security at all, maybe you're better off with the Epiphone versions. I mean, you don't want your precious baby Gibson Les Paul Custom to get banged up by the local idiot backstage or worse off, get stolen. Better carry the player's affordable guitar and have a good time, not looking over your shoulder and worrying about your expensive Gibson every minute after the gig. Is the Inspired by Gibson Custom worth it? Definitely. Epiphone improved it in exactly where it needed and even further. They didn't even need to swap the headstock shape, but new people would be hesitant to upgrade if it had the same Kalamazoo headstock as the previous version. The open book Gibson head is a huge selling point for a lot of people, even though it makes no difference whatsoever to sound and playability. However, don't be fooled. As good as the new Epiphone inspired by Gibson Custom is, it ain't the Gibson Custom. The recorded sound and the looks on pictures might be there, but trust me, in your hands, the Gibson feels way better. The good news is, whichever one you choose, you can't go wrong with either one of these.